And to bring us more clarity today, I'd like to bring in our own Jeffery Jaxen, who has been covering and looking at the news. Just give me a breakdown of some of the changes. There's been a lot that's really happened in the last 7 days, once again, since we last spoke on Thursday. So, Jeffery, where are we at? What happened this week?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Del. Well, let's just go right into Johns Hopkins virus tracker. We've been watching that since our first reporting on this, and I actually had to pull new numbers this morning because they changed right before our broadcast here. So the United States is reporting over 226,000 cases, 5,300 deaths roughly. Italy, 115,000 cases, almost 14,000 deaths. Spain, 110,000 cases, a little over 10,000 deaths. Now, taking that and looking at and containment measures, looking at the compulsory or recommended confinements, curfews, quarantines, it equates to basically half the world's population is experiencing some kind of confinement or lockdown strategy. So it's to say this is unprecedented is not even coming close to where we're at as a global society here. Moving into the United States, launching into this week, the Trump administration said that they're going to extend social distancing guidelines until the end of March. So that was a new thing. He still did not say that there will be a federal shutdown, although a lot of people are still prodding him to do that. So this is longer than the initial 15-day timeline that they started out with at the beginning of this for the White House. But the Trump administration did sign finally the $2 trillion stimulus package. That was something that was kind of in the works as we were doing our show last week. It was a bipartisan effort that is signed, basically $1,200 one-time payments to many Americans, sets up a $500 billion corporate liquidity fund, boosts unemployment benefits. But even after it was signed, people were asking, economists were saying, is this going to be enough? Are we going to have to do this in a couple of weeks? And sure enough, today, right before this show, the Labor Department released the jobless claims for last week, and they're stunning. We're looking at 6.6 million last week. The initial jobless claims surged to over 6.6 million. That brings the total to 10 million Americans over the last 2 weeks. And, that's a pretty, it's a sad number to report as we're going through all these numbers. They kind of get lost in the mix, but this is something that,
it's a sad number to report, but it's an obvious number, right? I mean, we're all at home. We're in lockdown. People can't work. Small businesses, we knew this was the sacrifice we were going to make, right? This is the sacrifice we've been asked here in America, and other nations have been asked to take on this sacrifice. So this is it. We're looking at the jobless numbers. There's no surprise here. We can't blame anybody for this except, I guess, a virus or the response to the virus. But here we are, 6.6 million jobs and counting. Okay, what else do we have?
Yeah, so, well, let's go over to the UK. Last week, we reported that the Imperial College revised its model. Now, that model had kind of baked into the cake a ridiculously wide range of 500,000 deaths for the UK all the way down to less than 20,000. So Neil Ferguson, headlines came out. He was kind of the focus of a lot of headlines bashing him, talking about his backing off his claim, revising his claim. And, I know you're going to break this down a little more in the show, so I'll just leave it there. I will say, though, that doing some research, some of his previous work, his previous models were instrumental in modeling that led to the slaughter of more than 6 million animals during the foot and mouth outbreak in 2001 that left Britain economically devastated. So during that time, basically people are saying, like, look, this is the damage that untrue models can cause. They can cause real harm, real devastation. So I think the lesson here is critical decisions are being made or were made, and with some pretty interesting modeling algorithms, I guess you want to call them, or source code. So right. Now back to the UK again. The UK tests. This is a similar thing that happened when the CDC rolled out its tests in early March. It was reported that those tests saw contamination of unknown causes. Now the UK is reporting that their tests are showing contamination of the coronavirus when they're trying to roll them out. I mean, I'll just leave that there. It doesn't need any more. It doesn't need any more commentary. But the key primers and probes are contaminated. So that's going to hamper a lot of efforts in the UK. It's going to change. I mean, the ripple effect on that is untold.
Wow. Amazing.
Yeah.
Have we heard any thoughts on chloroquine? We've been discussing that all along with the show. Where are we at with chloroquine, which is the malaria drug that Donald Trump really, we reported weeks ago that Dr. Didier Raoult had really great success with studies looking at chloroquine. We were hearing that international studies were going on. What's happening in America? I know Donald Trump was asking to ramp that up. He wanted the FDA to sort of release it. Where are we at now?
Yeah, so last week, last Monday, France approved the use of chloroquine for severe coronavirus patients. And then just recently, the FDA approved emergency use authorization for hydrochloroquine and chloroquine. So that is a positive step in the right direction, it seems. Definitely, we were ahead out on that reporting. Now, over to New York. Now, this is an interesting story. There is a doctor in New York. He's been across the headlines for the last couple of weeks. It's Dr. Vladimir Zelenko. He's a board-certified practitioner. He first treated 350 coronavirus patients with 100% success using a mixture of hydrochloroquine with a combination of the antibiotic Z-Pak and zinc sulfate. He's updated now. So this most recent update, he's treated 699 COVID-19 patients in New York. 0 patients died, 0 patients intubated, 4 hospitalizations, and the whopping cost for all of this is basically about $20 over the period of 5 days.
And when I watch this, what's a little bit disturbing is something I think you just pointed out there is the fact that he is saying, I never intubated my patients. I didn't have to. 100% success rate. What that tells me is he's starting the process of using chloroquine earlier. France may be using it in extreme circumstances. The FDA is releasing it for, extreme circumstances. But I would guess, I'm just speculating here, that extreme means you're going onto a ventilator. You're now in a place where you are at death's door. And at that point is the only place we're starting chloroquine. It certainly seems like the success, when we look at the studies done by Didier Raoult and others, is that you really want to start it earlier. Not for everybody. Remember, we have to remember, Jeffrey, right, that, virtually, I think they're saying 90% of us will have either no symptoms or very mild symptoms if we get it. So we're talking about those others that tend to be, I think when you're moving in a direction where it's not going well. My curiosity with this is, are we starting that drug program in time? Are we, if it's just like in an emergency situation, I wouldn't want to wait till I'm about to die to try a malaria drug that's been in circulation for 75 years. I know that Donald Trump's been looking at this. We've reported on the fact that, Fauci says there's trials. So do we have trials going on now in America looking at chloroquine?
Yeah, there's actually trials by the NIH. But even before that, we had trials in March 9th in 2020 by Chinese researchers. And they found that basically the hydrochloroquine was found to inhibit SARS-CoV-2 in vitro. And then the hydrochloroquine basically drives zinc into the cells. So there's a study funded by the NIH as well from 2004 that shows that zinc inhibits respiratory syncytial virus replication in the lungs. So this isn't stuff that is like this brand new cutting edge stuff. This is all known. And to go back to your point, Dr. Zelenko, he reported that the symptoms of the shortness of breath resolved in 4 to 6 hours after treatment. So this is something that is not, it's a pretty quick turnaround.
And we're seeing this spike, right? We're talking about this spike. I think what's somewhat disturbing, look, people that have been with the Highwire for the last several years know that I'm all about safety testing. That's one of the biggest issues. We have a legal team that is suing on different types of products and vaccines that haven't been through proper safety studies. I'm really into safety studies, but we are talking about a product that has been proven safe for 75 years. Now, let's not beat around the bush. There are, side effects. One of the major ones being, there's some hallucinations and things that can come from. My understanding is about 25% of the patients, I think it wears off. So you have to imagine if you're sick, but this is something that when I went to Haiti, they gave a bottle of this to every one of us that were going to go and deal with the earthquake in Haiti when I was working on the doctor's television show. And basically, you were allowed to pop this like candy. So we obviously don't think it's so dangerous. So I just think about all the times we rush through. We're rushing on a vaccine right now. We're rushing to, test all these other things. But right now, if the next 2 weeks is the critical point Are we really waiting to do studies to have the chloroquine move into into a space that's less about just if you're about to die, and really, if you really are showing strong symptoms, shortness of breath, wouldn't it be smart, since this is the 2 weeks that are going to matter, to really bring chloroquine in? I mean, this isn't even a part of the show today, but I just wanted to jump on it because there's so much to get to. But it just kind of defies reason, doesn't it? We've never seen people dropping dead from chloroquine. It's something we use all the time for people that travel to third world nations. We know that we had success using it during SARS, which was a coronavirus. Why would we be just so gentle right now? It really begs the question, as we're staring at the face of 100 to 200,000 deaths now. Why aren't we just saying, you know what do you have to lose? I think even Donald Trump said that. What do you have to lose? What do we have to lose, Jeffrey?
In my opinion, nothing. It seems counterproductive not to do it. I mean, with what's at stake here, and we don't have to go through it. We just went through it in this news headlines. We know what's at stake. There's so much. This is things for a couple dollars. These doctors can prescribe this. We don't have to wait. They can prescribe it with zinc, and off it goes. I mean, what's the negative? What's the negative components to this? I can't see if you have a plus and minus column. I see a lot of pluses and not many minuses here. So my question, or my answer to that, is the same thing to your question, is what do we have to lose, really?
I mean, when they're saying we could hit 200,000 deaths, I mean, rightfully so, they're not including chloroquine as being able to lower that. They're saying if we do anything but chloroquine, but that could really, if you're looking at Zelenko saying 699 cases, 100% success rate, I sure would love to see the medical establishment change its route here. I'd like to see hospitals around the country, personally, if there's just not a really strong downside, it just seems like we could swing this. And by the way, as we're watching 6 million people being laid off and counting and going that direction, it stands to reason we could avoid a lockdown or get out of this lockdown if you could take care. I mean, right, we're all here. We're all in lockdown. The healthy people are in lockdown. All of us could walk out tomorrow and get this, and it'll be just like a cold for everyone that's healthy, which is what we've been told from the data all around the world. We've only been worried about those that have pre-existing conditions and are going to get really sick. If you had a cure for them, then we're out of lockdown. But that's not where this is going. There are people calling for even more dramatic lockdown, are there not?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'll touch on this really quick. We have Bill Gates. He stepped down a couple of weeks ago from Microsoft and Berkshire Hathaway board of directors. That was really unprecedented. And he's launched himself full speed ahead into this virus response and kind of like a crystal ball prediction man. So he's talking about, in a Reddit AMA recently, he's talking about, quote, digital certificates will be used to identify who received the upcoming COVID-19 vaccine. They'll also be used to identify who can conduct businesses, travel, and then Gates was also out front. This is just recently. This is, I believe, yesterday was the headline calling for the United States lockdown. So we have Bill Gates suggesting the United States stays locked down for 6 weeks. It's calling for a nationwide social isolation policy, either by all governors or at the federal level. So he's going in pretty hard. And I don't have to tell the viewers that obviously he's associated with vaccination and vaccination development here. So pretty interesting to keep an eye on.
He has skin in the game.
Yeah,
I mean, he definitely has skin in the game. He's got funding in major pharmaceutical companies, which are really behind a lot of this modeling, what's going on. There's a lot of questions I think that people are starting to have. But the idea of, digital, we're hearing, discussions of microchipping people to see if they've had the illness and are immune, or if they've had their vaccines. I mean, a lot of this. And I think as we're locked down, more and more people are starting to feel like we're in the middle of some sort of science fiction movie. And the idea, is that where we're going to go? Are we going to see lockdowns more in our future? Are our children going to get used to, during flu seasons, we lock down, we let our jobs disappear, we're going to get microchipped to get out of it? So many questions. Jeffrey, thank you for bringing all that information to us.